time, as you go through the Bible, not only are you looking at the patriots, we all know the patriots, they're famous all over the world. St. Peter, we don't call him St. Peter, but we know them. Moses, David, Joseph. If I say it, more than likely, if I have 10 people in the room, over half of them are going to finish the story for me. So the Lord said, I want you to go down the list. And as you go down the list, you know their stories, but I want you to look again. So let's start. We're going to start with Genesis 37, 1 through 11. And this is going to be, Genesis 37, 1 through 11, and it's the story of Joseph. You all know Joseph. Joseph, they call him the dreamer. So I'm going to ask you to stand for the reading of the word. And the 11th verse says, his brothers were jealous of him. And this is Genesis 37, 1 through 11. We're going to start at the first verse. Jacob lived in a land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Belial, and the sons of Zephyr, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream. When he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out of the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed to it. You may have your seats. So Joseph has this dream, and in his dream, God gave him the dream, but his brothers didn't think that. Remember, there were many brothers that Joseph had, but Joseph was on the bottom, not all the way in the bottom because there was Benjamin, but he was close to the bottom. So his brothers didn't think much of him. How dare you? You think your sheaves are going to bow? Our sheaves are going to bow to you? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Joseph, he's a kid. He's young. He's excited, and he knows he's got his father's love. But his brothers are looking at him like, I don't know. This little guy, he thinks he's something. He's not all of that. So then the next thing you know, Joseph has another dream. And in this dream, he says, I had a dream. And in my dream, the sun and the moon bowed to me. Now, wait a minute. Now, this is his mother and his father looking at him. Wait a minute. His dad says, wait a minute now. Who do you think you are? Me and your mother are going to bow down to you? Who in the world do you think you are? You think you're something different, special, better than everybody else? I don't know. And I'm pretty sure his dad probably began to wonder, well, maybe I poured a little too much love on him. He's got the big head. Well, you know the rest of the story. Joseph's brothers sells him. He ends up in Egypt. He ends up in the prison. He ends up with these other men who end up in the prison with him. But Joseph is a dreamer. And not only is he a dreamer, he's able to interpret dreams. So long story short, Joseph interprets the dream, and as a result, he gets the heir of the person who's in charge of Egypt, who makes Joseph second in charge. And Joseph, of course, saves his whole family, and everybody eventually comes. And what do? Bow before Joseph. So I say, look again. Look again. Joseph didn't look like he was going to be second in charge, but in the end, he was. Okay. And by the way, we often wonder, how did the children of Israel end up in Egypt? Because Joseph was second in charge. So that's how they got there. All right, so then after Joseph, we know years and years went by, and there was a whole group of pharaohs that went through Egypt being in charge. And they rose up, and they didn't know Joseph. So the Pharaoh had heard about a prophecy that there was this deliverer coming, because the children of Israel, we knew they ended up in bondage and all that. And so the Pharaoh knew that there was a deliverer coming, and he's like, okay, I know what I'll do. I will send out a law that every child that's born of the Hebrews or the children of Israel, we will kill it if it's a boy. But if it's a girl, let her live and enjoy a beautiful life. Well, Moses, his mother, when he was 3 months old, she saved him. She was able to keep him from getting killed. But one day, she knew it was just a matter of time that they would find him and he would not be alive anymore. So she put him in the river. And she just left him there, not because she was trying to get rid of him, but she prayed over him and she put him in the river. Well, God, with his smart self, what a smart God we have, he sends Pharaoh's daughter to go take a bath. Go take a bath in the river. And of course, she's royal, so she has servants with her. So as she's down in the river, all of a sudden, passing through the river is this beautiful baby. She picks up the baby, and she looks, and God just gives her a heart of compassion. So she picks up this wonderful child, and she decides, I'm going to take him as my own. So one of her servants, who just happens to be Moses' sister, says, okay, here's what we're going to do. I think you should call someone to help you. So she said, that's a great idea. Go get me a Hebrew woman to take care of this baby, to nurse it, because it's only 3 months old. Well, God in all his wisdom decides to call forth Moses' mom. She becomes his nurse right in Pharaoh's house. Now remember, Pharaoh was the one who gave the decree, the order, the law to kill the boys, right? But there's something about authority. Something about authority and being royal, right? So Pharaoh's daughter, she defied that decree. Not in disrespect, but because she had authority. So she brings the babe right in Pharaoh's house and raises him as her own son. Well, you know the story. Moses decides not to suffer with the children. He decides to suffer with the children of Israel rather than serve sin for a season. Once he rose up, he realizes, oh no, I can't live this life of royalty and my people are suffering. So in the end, Moses becomes the deliverer. But here's the point. God said in the beginning, Moses wasn't even worthy to live. He wasn't worthy to live according to Pharaoh. Pharaoh gave the order, kill the firstborn, or kill the boy child rather. Every boy child, kill them. They are not worthy to live. The girls can, but the boys can't. But look how God flipped the script. He turned it around and let his own daughter raise up the deliverer right in his house. So God says, look again. Someone who was not worthy to live. So today, some of you might even be thinking, who am I? Look, what have I done with my life? Look at me. I've messed up. Look at me. I am not even worthy to live. I'm not worthy. Some people, maybe even out there, if you're listening to this message, you might have even been contemplating suicide because you feel like I'm not even worthy to live. But God said, look again. There's more to you than meet the eye. The other people can't see it, but I can. And there's stuff in your future that you don't even know about. There's something in your future that is going to take place, not only for you, but for people that are all around you. Just like he did for Joseph. Just like he did for Moses. Moses, he led them through the Red Sea. And eventually, that's where we get the Hebrews, the Jewish people. It's their story. God said, look again. One last person in the Bible days that I like to talk about is David. David called the shepherd boy. Well, you know the story. David was a little kid, kept his father's sheep. But one day there was a great Philistine army that was there. And there was a giant called Goliath who says that he was going to just destroy all of the children of Israel. He was their prize fighter, the Philistines' prize fighter. And so there was a prophecy again that said out of Jesse's loins was going to come the next king. Out of Jesse is going to be one of the greatest warriors, right? So Jesse was David's father. So King Saul, he goes down and he says, they said Jesse's house. So he goes to Jesse's house and he began to inquire of Jesse, where are your sons? I want to see all of them. Come on, bring them. One by one they came. The greatest one, strong, muscular, just looking like a warrior. And Jesse, he just knew it was going to be that one. Nope, that's not the one. Send the next one. The next one I can imagine was tall and stately looking. And he looked like he was the ruler and the great warrior. Nope, it's not the one. And I believe it was the third one. Same thing. Wait a minute. We know prophecies come true, right? Prophecies come to pass. Jesse, wait a minute. What are you doing? Are you holding out on me? Do you have any more sons? Oh, yeah, I do. I have one more, but it can't be him. Not him. Not him. That one, he's just a little shepherd boy. He's keeping the sheep. Bring him here. They bring little David. David comes, and they inquire of David. They begin to question him. David, he was little, but guess what? He was strong in his spirit because he knew God. He spent time with God. He's out in the field. So when you're out in the field taking care of sheep, there's nobody hardly out there with you. You have a lot of time to spend with God. So David steps up, and they begin to question him, and David begins to say, wait a minute. There was a lion. There was a bear. They all came to devour my father's sheep. But I destroyed them all. And one scripture says, I tore them apart with my bare hands. So then David heard the story. He said, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? How dare somebody who don't know my God, who is the living God, curse me and my family and my people and curse my God? Oh, who does he think he is? He doesn't know the reality that we serve the living God. So David said, I'll get him. I'll take care of him. Just prepare me. And he began, I can imagine, he began to talk to God and say, God, you see what's happening. how people are here, these Philistines, and they want to defeat the children of Israel. They want to defeat us, and they've cursed you. So they put David out. They were getting ready to put him on the armor. David said, no, I won't take that because it's not quite proven. I've got something for Goliath. I have my own tools, because David spent time with God. And when you spend time with God, he'll tell you what you need. Other people will give you stuff, but what they give you may not be proven. It might be to your detriment. But David, he had a relationship with God, and he knew that if he asked God to deliver him, God would, because he had just that much faith. So David is standing before Goliath. Goliath comes, and the first thing out of his mouth was, am I a dog? You send this scrawny little Rudy fella, this little lad, this kid. Remember, Goliath was a giant in stature. He was huge. And here's David, this little kid. So he comes and he begins to just curse David, using his gods to curse David. Know what David's response was? He said, this day, I'll take off your head and I'll feed it to the fowls or the birds of the air. Now that's something, think about that. Let's look again at that. This little kid out in the field keeping sheep, who would ever think that he would be the person who would take off the head of Goliath, who would be able to destroy the Philistines? Well, David used, you know the story, a little slingshot with his little rock. But see, whatever you have in your hands, whatever God has given you in your hands is greater than any power that the enemy can come against you with. Anything that the enemy can say to try to curse you, he can't curse you. Guess why? Because you're already blessed. And if you're blessed, you cannot be cursed. Well, you know the end of the story. David defeats Goliath, and just as he spoke it into existence, he took off his head and fed it to the birds. So I say, look again. All of these people came through the Bible days, and they were unlikely. They were people that you would never think would do the greatest things that they've done. That's like you. There are great things in you. All you have to do is think about people you went to school with. Just think about it. Where are they now? They seem like they were the greatest. They had the best this, the best that. They looked like they were going forth and they were going to be great and mighty. Look at them now. Now, sure, of course, if you went to school with people, there's some of them that are quite successful. But I say, look again. Look again. Finally, there was a prophecy that came forth back in the Bible days. There shall be a babe born in a manger. I used to say, a manger, what does that mean? I looked at it and I looked it up. A manger was a place where the animals lived, and it was a feeding trough. Okay, there was a feeding trough where Jesus was born and laid in. There was hay. It was like a rectangular shape. And they had the hay there. He's in a blanket and swaddling clothing, and he's laid there. But before that all happened, there was a decree to kill the children because the boys, again, because there was a prophecy that said there was going to be the king of the Jews that was going to rise up, and out of his kingdom there shall be no end. So Herod decided to send out this prophecy. But what did God do? He asked Mary and Joseph, take the babe, get out, go before you have the baby. And they escaped. And of course, we know Jesus was born in Bethlehem. He was born in a place didn't look like much. Anybody that came, if they did not know about the prophecies, if they were not believers, you see a baby born in a manger. It's just like we hear on the news sometimes. Have you ever heard about children being born in some place and they end up putting them in a dumpster, a garbage can? There are kids every so often you'll hear about people finding them in a garbage can, newborn babies. Who would think, oh, these parents didn't love this child? It's in a garbage can. They're not going to be anything. Well, Jesus was born in a manger. A manger, he wasn't born in a palace. He was born in a place for the animals, a place of lowly estate. But the next thing that we know, Jesus becomes our Savior. So God is saying today, look again. Look again. What you think it is not. What you think is nothing is something. The Bible declares that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. You know, my grandmother, she was saved, and she was always talking to us about God and about the Bible and what is to come in the future. And she was born, my grandmother was born in 1898, just a little bit after slavery. She would see visions and things like that. And she said, she would tell us, she said, children, the bottom rail is coming to the top. In other words, the last will be first and the first will be last. Who you think is going to be great will not be. They may be great, but God has a way, and it's mighty sweet. His way is not like our way. We're looking, and I mean, I've even lived to experience, and my mom, she would say to me, Dolores, remember, the bottom rail will come to the top. The last will be first. She said, let me tell you something. I've seen many people, because when she was growing up, they had 10, 13 children. And she said, you know, I'll never forget. And she said, so-and-so had so many children, and they thought it was going to be him. That was going to be the great one. That was going to be the greatest one. Oh, yes. But guess what? There was another child. Oh, yeah, he's okay or she's okay. But this is the one that's going to make the family proud. Well, guess what? It was not the one they chose. It was not. I have a relative, great man of God. My grandmother, by the way, established many churches. And her son, my mother's brother, he became the lead over the churches. He had 2 sons. The one he thought was going to be the one was not the one. He just knew that one's going to be the one. Why? That one was just like him. The mistakes he made in his past, that one was like that. The one he was just, if he came here today, you would know him because he would make sure that you knew him. He was just so jovial and so friendly and so outgoing and so smart, and he played many instruments, and he could come up and he could get the church to begin to shout by giving glory and honor to God. That's the one they thought was going to be the one. But guess what? Time went on, and the Lord called him home. He had a brother, but he was like David. He kept the sheep. He was just kind of laid back. He wasn't like his dad. He was just kind of laid back, you know. He was a good guy, and he went to church and all. He played instruments. They all played many instruments, sung with some of the greatest people. But guess what? Guess who's in charge of the church today? That one. So the last will be first and the first will be last. And God is saying today, look again. Look again. Things that you think, that's not it. But what you have to do is seek his face. If you seek his face, he will begin to reveal to you the way to go. He will tell you, look again, that situation, that baba shande, that girlfriend, that boyfriend, shelabo shande. Look again, the one you thought you just knew. This is it. Oh, this is it. It's not the one. But God has a way, and it's mighty sweet. He'll begin to show you just what to do. You begin to question, is this really? Yes, this is the way. Walk in it. He'll speak to you. He'll tell you what to do. So I say to you today, this is a simple message. It wasn't meant to be a hooping and hollering message, but it is a message to understand that things that appear to be are not always what it is. For we know that the spiritual realm is much, much more real than the natural realm. Back to my grandmother. The last will be first, the first will be last. She said, let me tell you something. It's not going to always be like this. Back during her time, there was Jim Crow. You couldn't eat in the restaurant if you were black, if you were not white. You could not eat in certain restaurants. You had to go through the back. You couldn't drink out the water fountain. All those things was going on. But guess what? She saw it. She said it's not going to always be like that. She saw, just like Martin Luther King Jr. saw, he said, I have a dream that one day you will not be judged by the color of your skin, but by the content, what's on the inside of your character. Okay? So I say, look again. Who would have ever thought, whether you like him or don't like him, President Obama would have become president? I didn't think so. I really didn't. And I'm very optimistic. I would have never thought that. Why? I understand America. I grew up right here in the South. But God says, look again. Who would ever think that our children can raise up and go to college and do great? Not just a HBCU. And ain't nothing wrong with HBCUs. HBCUs are awesome because they've been there over 100 years. But guess what? There were other institutions we couldn't go to. Who would have ever thought that we would be able to get in? Who would ever think that we would be able to just live? God's saying today, look again. So the message today, things that you think are not possible, with God, they are possible. Never count anyone out. Because God said, if they seek him, God's hand comes on them. And when God's hand is on someone, when he blesses them, they are blessed and they cannot be cursed. Thank you.